So hello, welcome to week 5 of the course. As we begin an extended reading of Paul Landsberg's The Experience of Death. This is an extremely interesting essay and one of my personal favorites, and I think one of the best things ever written by a philosopher about death. It's not the easiest essay to read. Landsberg is not always, I think, completely clear about just what he's writing about or what question he's addressing, but I think at the end of it, it's an incredibly valuable thing to have read, and the questions he raises and his attitudes and his answers are really very extremely interesting and valuable. It is a Christian view of death, specifically I would say a Catholic Christian view of death, and that's interesting. Whether you are Catholic, Christian, whether you are a believer of any sort, whether you are an atheist or whether you have no belief at all in an afterlife, it's still something well worth considering. And I'll tell you why I thought it was appropriate to end the course with a reading of Landsberg. If we look at the first 4 weeks of the course, the things we've looked at are very varied in terms of their concerns. They're exploring different aspects of death and different philosophical issues that emerge, but I think they all share a certain viewpoint, which I would call the Epicurean viewpoint. And we go back to the beginning of the course, and that is that death is simply the end of the person in the person's entirety. That is, that death is the limit or end of all possible experience for the person, and that nothing of the person can be said to continue after death, that there's no survival of any aspect of the person. That is a very credible thesis. I like to call it the annihilationist thesis. Annihilation means literally becoming nothing, and that is the thesis of Epicurus, that death should be thought of as the total end or becoming nothing of the human being, and there are certain questions then to be addressed. Certain issues emerge about how to understand that and how to deal with that, and how to, as in Gray's essay on existentialism, how to interpret the meaning of that for our lives. But I thought that it would be inappropriate in any course, not just in a Catholic school, but in any school in which this kind of course goes on, to completely ignore the also credible thesis that death is not the complete end of the person, that we should explore the possibility that the person in some way does continue to have an existence after or through death, is something that needs to be addressed. I think not only for fairness, because of the great variety of people's beliefs who come to a course like this with regard to the afterlife and things like that, but just because it's a valuable thesis. I mean, I want you to seriously consider, hopefully, the Epicurean thesis that death is the annihilation of the person, that it's the absolute end or limit of all possible experience. I want you to seriously explore that and think about it. I also would like you to seriously explore and think about this this alternative, Landsberg's alternative in the experience of death. It does not require you to believe in an afterlife, but it's an interesting pathway of thought, or that he explores on this, which might reveal some very interesting things about death, even if you don't follow him all the way in the notion that human beings must think of themselves as transcending death and going beyond death in some way. So it's a very valuable thing to read.